in 1970.
Feels like that was the heyday of NASCAR as well, back in the 70s, you know? Like, let me know in the comments, obviously, but I feel like,
then we've just been chipping away,
you know, the 70s is, you know, the Make NASCAR Great Again era that people hark back to. Squad, it's your squid. You know what the video is about from the title and the thumbnail. Let's get into it.
Has fallen significantly since its highest point in the mid-2000s. Ideas on how to rectify this problem span the gamut between the sensible and the absurd,
Trying to boost the ratings
than about sporting, holding street races in the middle of major cities, doubling down on our core audience in the South. If you can think of it, then somebody has thrown it out there, and chances are NASCAR has probably tried it already.
Probably.
But without fail, if you ask fans about what should be done, one suggestion that always comes up, no matter what race, creed, color, age, or any other demographic fans fall into, is that we need more short tracks. It is literally the one thing NASCAR fans can all agree on.
That's interesting.
We just won't shut up about it. And practically speaking, it actually makes a lot of sense. A short track is technically any oval track that is less than a mile in length. So that means that startup costs are relatively low. And the smaller space needed means that less money is required to pay for upkeep and property taxes.
Nice,
as far as the racing product is concerned, short tracks almost always put on a good show. Why? Well, for one very simple reason. Less space means more contact, and NASCAR is
rubbing is racing, right?
One of the few motorsports where intentional and unintentional contact is not just tolerated, but encouraged. Fans love a
doing the old bump and runs and whatnot.
Even if there isn't a whole lot of beating and banging, the close quarters mean...
It's been a while since I watched a NASCAR video, actually, or any NASCAR. I got really into it during the lockdown, and then I haven't been able to just through the quirks of parenting and all that sort of stuff. So hit me up from the last season or so, like the last year or two of NASCAR. What are the highlights that I should react to? What's the best, absolute best of the best from the last year? Send me some links in the comments, and I will react to them.
Far away from anyone else, so there's always something going on. And just because a track is shorter doesn't mean it can't hold a lot of people. At one point, Bristol Motor Speedway topped out at a max capacity.
I was going to say Bristol when they were talking short tracks.
And even what we consider to be smaller venues could cram 60,000 fans within their confines. More than enough to make a tidy profit on racing.
Yeah, that's
However,
a chunky,
there is one glaring
crowd.
problem with this seemingly easy fix. Attendance is down at these tracks. The NASCAR Cup Series currently only runs at 3 short tracks: Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond, 2 times apiece per season. Bristol looks like a straight-up ghost town for its spring race. Martinsville has downsized considerably and still has patches of bare metal grandstands out there. And Richmond has torn down half of its seats in the last decade and can't even come close to filling the seats that remain. People say they want short track racing, but then they never seem to show up for it.
It's good TV.
It's just a case of people not putting their money where their mouth is. But it's not really the people's fault. Take a look at this. Here's a map of every track on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule for 2022. Pretty diverse group here. But then here are where all the short tracks are. See that?
Right.
All 3 of our short tracks are competing for the same group of people in the Tennessee, Virginia area. Of course no one shows up for these races. We're asking the same group of people to go to 6 races per year. That shit's expensive even if you're local and don't have to camp out or get a hotel.
Yeah, 100%.
Making matters worse is that for their spring races, Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond hold their races back to back to back 3 weeks in a row.
Shit, yeah, as if you would.
For a minute.
It's a logistics nightmare.
To think about going to 3 races in 3 weeks. I actually did that last year, and by the time the 3rd weekend started, I was already feeling burned out and was just ready for it to be over with.
Yeah.
So why are the 3 remaining short tracks so close together? Why didn't NASCAR or anyone else build new race-ready big league short tracks anywhere besides this area? Well, NASCAR and SMI built a lot of new top-of-the-line tracks in the 90s and early 2000s. They built them all over the place, too. Las Vegas, Texas, Kentucky, California, Kansas, Chicago, you name it.
What happened
You can't
to
say they didn't put their eggs in a lot of different baskets. But all of these tracks were huge 1.5 or 2 mile circuits. Track builders saw the rabid turnout at big tracks like Charlotte, Atlanta, and Michigan and said, hey, we're getting 6-figure numbers of people to show up to those places, and we're making bank
more effort there,
so let's just keep doing that. There was also a push to make NASCAR seem more civilized during this time, too. Teams and sponsors
the longer
didn't want
races, you weren't bumping and grinding as much.
Out there. They wanted talented athletes making clean passes with skill rather than muscle. But racing at these new tracks was mediocre
sense.
at best most of the time, or just an outright snooze fest.
They're boring.
Cars were getting too far apart for the action to occur, and as the cars became more aerodynamically dependent thanks to new technological advances, it only made the problem worse.
Drafting.
During this time, no new short tracks were built, as they were seen as boring as each other. And everyone wanted the big, new, shiny super speedways that were some of the largest sporting venues ever built in human history to draw in more interest. As a matter of fact, the last time a brand new short track was added to the Cup Series schedule was in 1970, when the Saratoga Speedway hosted 2 races, one apiece in 1970 and 1971.
Feels like that was the heyday of NASCAR as well, back in the 70s, you know? Like, let me know in the comments, obviously, but I feel like,
then, we've just been chipping away,
you know, the 70s is, you know, the Make NASCAR Great Again era that people hark back to.
Earlier, Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond, in addition to North Wilkesboro and the Nashville Fairgrounds. Want to know where those tracks are located? Well,
somewhere around there.
Right where all the other ones are. Making matters worse is the only 2 prospects for new short tracks being added to the Cup Series schedule are Nashville and North Wilkesboro, which have just been greenlit for big renovations.
Great.
Those aren't going to solve our problem.
Yeah, no, they're just going to compound them.
Our existing fan base even thinner. But hold on, we had these 5 tracks crammed together for decades with people still showing up and packing out stands. What happened? Why is it so hard to get these people now? Well, 2 things. First was NASCAR grew in the 90s, and so did the ticket prices. NASCAR was the biggest craze in the country, so
price yourself out of your fans.
Ticket and campground prices to push revenue even higher. For some perspective, my grandparents used to rent a campground site at the Charlotte Motor Speedway right near where the dirt track is today for the All-Star Race weekend. The cost to get that exact spot for the entire weekend with electric and water hookups was just $100. That was it. The tickets to the race to sit on the front stretch at pit entrance were $45 a piece. Pole night tickets were $10.
And that would be fun.
Rock race right afterwards.
That'd be a hell of a time.
As a 6-year-old kid, I bought my own ticket to watch Mark Martin win an IROC race in 1996.
That's cool.
Today, forget about it. Even the cheap seats down in the splash zone will run you $65 at most places. And to sit up higher like I was back in the day could easily run $110.
Is that like a public liability insurance thing, or is it just blatant price gouging?
NASCAR has always relied on a thriving middle class to show up to races, and for most, the cost of going to 2 or 3 races a year was doable. But nowadays, it's just too tall of an order.
Yeah,
that
fair
gets
enough.
us to our second point. The middle class in America has been absolutely decimated in recent years. In the 90s, manufacturing jobs started to dry up.
Politics would be coming into a NASCAR video, but that's cool. All right.
The middle class in
Tell me more,
America
buddy.
has been absolutely decimated in recent years. In the 90s, manufacturing jobs started to dry up. I was in middle school when the last textile mill shut down in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina in the early 2000s. These were pretty good paying middle-class jobs, and you really only needed a high school diploma to get them. A few of these manufacturing jobs remained, but by and large, people switched to one of 2 things: service industry jobs that paid less, or they moved to the big cities where all the opportunities were. This meant that small-town America got hit hard too. Once vibrant downtowns in middle America withered away into abandoned carcasses. In 1996, North Wilkesboro Speedway was dropped from the Cup Series schedule, and that hurt Wilkes County pretty badly.
Yeah, I bet.
But the next 2 hits floored them. A Lowe's distribution center closed its doors, and a glass manufacturing plant moved overseas. Stories like this pop up in every state in the union, and eventually everyone felt the sting. This wasn't just NASCAR's problem.
It's a spread, you know, or a broad
sport, from the MLB to the NFL. People just can't afford it anymore. Even restaurants like Ruby Tuesday, TGI Fridays, Hooters, and Applebee's
they're getting shut down, I don't know.
Ropes because the middle class they once catered to just doesn't exist anymore. Turns out if you squeeze people hard enough, they stop spending their money on luxury items and focus on necessities. They stop going out to eat, they stop going on vacation. And
hey, speaking of money, if you want to join my Patreon, do me a solid, do that. But failing that, just hit the subscribe button. If this is the first time you've seen me, poke around the channel. Don't just judge me based off this video. Poke around the channel. I've got a whole bunch of different playlists. I got some shorts that I think are funny. They don't get as many views as other videos though. So yeah, poke around the channel. Decide if you like me, then hit that subscribe button and consider giving me some money.
Stop showing up
so I can be part of this ever-shrinking middle class.
When NASCAR and SMI built all those new tracks in big markets in the 90s, it was because they saw the writing on the wall. People are moving to where the opportunities are, and those are in the big cities.
Well, take the tracks there to them, which is then the street circuits that he was talking about at the start, though, which is...
NASCAR just doesn't appeal to the metropolitan. Its heart and soul is in the small towns with middle-class America.
Yeah, the bootleggers.
Drivers from the 90s and early 2000s came from humble beginnings, and that was always the draw. We like to watch common men do uncommon things.
Fucking
Go to
A.
your local short track today and take a look at the people there. None of them have PhDs. Most of them went through high school and that was it. Probably a lot of them don't even own the building that they live in. Americans got squeezed a lot in the last few decades, and median wages barely kept up with inflation as the cost of living continued to rise. The rich got richer, the middle class shrank, and the poor got poorer. And before you start pointing fingers down in the comments, this was overseen by every president since the 80s on both sides of
politics,
either side. Something that was started by one person or one group. This is something that has been perpetuated for decades. NASCAR's short track problem has
personally, I blame Reagan, but hey, you know,
lack of diversity in venues.
You can sit on the fence, brother.
Its core problem is an economic problem. The average NASCAR fan just cannot afford to go to a race, let alone 3 races at short tracks that are all within spitting distance of one another. So how do we combat this? I don't know. I can spitball some ideas out there, but ultimately there is no silver bullet that can magically fix this problem, because it's way bigger than either me or NASCAR. Hailing back to the expansionist phase of the 90s, NASCAR has once again gone to where the people have migrated to and held the 2022 Busch Clash at a temporary short track constructed inside of the LA Coliseum.
That's pretty cool though, that looks dope.
Some good turnout, and it looks to host the Clash again in 2023.
Looks like a tiny track, not a short track.
Forward to solving the short track conundrum we find ourselves in. But some part of me thinks that temporary short tracks and football stadiums is just putting a band-aid over a cancerous tumor.
Yeah.
It's not solving the problem, it's just nibbling around the edges. There is some talk about converting the 2-mile California Speedway into a half-mile short track, but it's just
that could be interesting.
Talk. Absolutely no arrangements have been made to do the full conversion, and so far only the idea has been floated out there.
Fair enough. I mean, it would be relatively easy, surely.
Chicagoland into short tracks sounds more reasonable.
Like comparatively to building a new one.
This, only North Wilkesboro and Nashville are even in the conversation. And as much as I want to see these legacy venues return to NASCAR competition, I worry that the people who would love to watch a race at these joints might just not be able to ever afford it. The big tracks and road courses that we have on the schedule now are far enough apart from one another that they have their own unique fan bases, but all of our short tracks are fighting each other for the same one, yeah. Being squeezed out of coming to races altogether. NASCAR could buy out an already existing short track in a new market like Colorado National or Kern County Speedway, and then renovate it for a top-tier series race, but that comes with its own
That's got its own costs as well.
Local weekly races? What if it doesn't get the return on investment you hoped, and now you're just out tens of millions of dollars? We can't keep doing what we're doing, and we have no easy outs coming down the pipe. And that, in a nutshell, is NASCAR's short track problem. Sorry to end this on
paints an ugly picture, doesn't he?
If you got a magic fix or a silver bullet handy, I'd really like to hear about it.
Yeah, fuck those, bro.
Thanks for watching, and until next time, y'all take it easy.
Yeah, I got no idea, man. I'm sorry. I got absolutely no idea personally, but hey, if you... I expect you've probably already watched it and let him know if you're watching my reaction to this video, but if you haven't, feel free to let me know in the comments, or even if you have, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. As I mentioned earlier in the video, these guys give me money. I like money. Feel free to give me some of your money. You can do it with a super thanks button if it's there, if the video hasn't been, like, you know, hit for a copyright thing or whatever. But there's also affiliates and whatnot. If you want your beard to look as good as mine, hit up the Milkman Grooming and all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to keep recording. I'll see you when I look at you. As I said, make sure to hit the subscribe button. That would be really cool. I'm trying to get to 10K. And yeah, hit the bell as well. If you're watching this and you're subscribed but you haven't hit the bell, early views and early likes really, really help. So hit the bell so that you can watch my stuff as I upload it. But yeah, I'll see you when I look at you. You'll see me when you look at me. Thanks so much for watching.